We are the people of Mercury. I am your interplanetary host, Travis Montgomery. These views reflect one planet and one planet alone. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are at. This is Mercury's Cast, episode 71. I am your host, Travis Montgomery. Tonight, we are going to talk about climate change and some of the new cell phone technology that has come out. Let's get the intros out of the way. Alexander, how the hell are you doing today?
Doing swell. Good to be back. Made a few changes. Trying to get things on my end, looking and feeling a lot nicer.
Sweet. Yeah, for anyone that is going to go to the YouTube video to watch this broadcast as we triangulate from Bakersfield to Orange County to Northern California, somewhere up there, Alexander has a new background. It's red because he represents communism. And Heil Stalin, I guess. I don't know. Whatever commies say. Whatever commies say. And now, first-time guest on the show, Josh Ferguson, host of The Hourly Struggle, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to right now. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Absolutely great. I'm thrilled to have you on the show. It's kind of weird how it came up organically. I was probably going to invite you at one point or another, but I don't want to step on Sean's toes or anything. Actually, when I first started the podcast, Sean was on for a good solid 12 until he started his other podcast,
Childhood Remastered. And I wasn't mad at him. I did miss him. And then now you guys got a really good thing going. The Hourly Struggle. Tell me a little bit how you and him got linked up, because I heard a little backstory, but I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah, we actually met through a mutual acquaintance. I think Sean had talked to a mutual friend who I won't out, but Sean had talked to him about doing a political podcast. And that this person just threw it out to myself and a few others. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then so Sean, about a couple months later, Sean and I finally met and decided to sort of jump into it, which is funny because it fell an interview with State Senator Josh Newman sort of fell into our laps. I sort of worked my way into angling for it by using. I guess sorry, I'm sort of kind of a cat climbing. I got to think about this.
Go for it, but it's all good.
So I ran for city council last year during the last election, and during that, you sort of when you run for office, you meet everybody else who was also running for office, and that's how I met the mutual friend that Sean and I have. And I'd also met our now state senator Josh Newman, who's being recalled. So when he made a vote to raise the gas taxes here in California with a bill called SB1, and when that happened, the Republican Party jumped on to recall him. And he wasn't talking to anybody. He wasn't responding to anybody. Wasn't doing any interviews. And because I had sort of made inroads to him, I said, hey, you want to come on our podcast? And Sean and I had one podcast at that point. We had our intro podcast and nothing else. And Newman agreed to it. And we did that. And it was on the local radio. It was on KFI 640. It was on part of it was on 600 Kogo in San Diego.
So big. That's so huge.
And then, and that was our second episode. And then it we've gone from there. We're up to, I think, our next episode is going to be number 19. And it's interesting because a lot of people who don't realize it, like Sean and I have only known each other really a couple weeks longer than we've been doing a podcast, and people sort of assume that we've known each other for years. We're really good friends and whatnot. We become friends, but it's just one of those, play off. It works really well.
Yep, podcast will do that. And we did last time we had Sean on. I believe we spoke about that. I thought that was a pretty interesting episode, at least for us, because it's a good way for us to piggyback off you guys.
That's the only reason why we're having you on.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
It's true. we've had a few guests like that, but I actually went back and I watched that one and I thought that was so interesting, and especially up here. I don't know if down there you guys have it on if you guys have pollsters running about trying to get it on the ballots, but they were recently pushing for a gas tax recall. Well. Voting to cancel out the new gas tax because everyone's so
correct. It's
Yeah, so there's two different issues that happen with that. Travis Allen out of Huntington Beach, assemblyman out of Huntington Beach, is actually pushing the gas tax repeal initiative that they're trying to get signatures throughout the state because they have to get a lot more signatures for that. So as an example, to recall the state senator Josh Newman or any state senator, you need like just over 63,000 valid signatures. For a proposition, you need a much higher number than that. So yeah, it's statewide that they're trying to get that put on the ballot for, I guess it would be June or whenever the primary is.
I used to be that annoying person pestering people in front of grocery stores for their for their signatures. But I thought that was I feel a little stupid here because I haven't followed it since I gave my signature. Do you know if that's made any headway?
They haven't. They usually don't release numbers until they've got the numbers. So the counties will have to. Every county clerk will. The signatures get turned into county clerks, and then it goes to the Secretary of State. I don't know the timeline for a statewide initiative. I know it was 6 months for Senator Newman's recall issue. But yeah, we probably won't hear anything for several months until we know that either they're doing really well and they're going to get the numbers, or it's just going to tank. Because getting signatures for something that large with that many registered voters to sign up is a difficult prospect.
Well, it's funny how that worked out too, because I disagree with all taxation, but I'm one of those radicals.
Because taxation.
But looking at all of the recent laws that have gone through, the bag thing, for instance, anyone that's worked retail or has been to a retail establishment in California since that no bag law, an abysmal failure. And the money that they're raising through it isn't going towards anything productive. So here it's just an additional fee passed on to the consumer, and the business keeps all the money from it.
So here's the better part. I'll actually segue that into what you guys are going to talk about with climate change. Is that so? Back when I worked at Kinko's, we had a HR person for the region who sent out a big thing about banning bags, and this is something just like 2007, 2008, like banning bags and how bad they were, and this is sort of led to the impetus of the ban going up, is everyone pushing this information. But when I looked it up, it's funny because Ralph's put out a recycle bin for plastic bags outside of their stores, and they found that 40% of the bags they put out came back in that capacity. People brought the bags back. They recycled them. Also, the bags aren't correct, but the bags also aren't single use. A lot of people use them to bag the recyclables. You pick, like if I have a dog, so I use it to pick up dog crap or whatever else, as opposed to buying actual single use bags from PetSmart or wherever to pick up your animal's mess. You can just use the bag you have. The funniest thing about it, though, is that the bags at the grocery stores were actually made out of ethylene, which is a natural gas byproduct. They do one of two things with this ethylene. They either burn it off into the atmosphere, or they make things out of it.
So you're talking about the old thin bags that we used to get.
The old bags we used to love.
Not the new.
Basically disintegrate
not the new super thick.
The one that was filmed in American
super thick, 200 time use, and I use that very, very, very.
The new bags are made out of plastic, which is actually made out of petroleum. Or they're plastic weave, which is still made out of an oil byproduct.
This is just another one of those worse. Another one of those things where where on paper it looks like they're doing something good, but the backhanded reality, truth of the matter is that it's really something that is not good. It's taking us back.
It's actually harming. It's harming more because the bags that are now being made are so much thicker and so much less degradable. Like if an animal gets one of these bags caught, on its head, it's not going to be able to break through that bag. It's thick stuff, but it's still not that reusable. I've had like 3 or 4 of them just totally break. And
it's actually worse than that because the argument against things not biodegrading is sort of a farce to begin with, because the way they actually design landfills is so things cannot biodegrade. If you think about biodegradable issues, you think about like compost in your backyard where you have dry and wet material and it has to be mixed up and turned. That's why if you go on Amazon and look at composters, they're big barrels or they're big balls that turn in order to turn everything over. But the landfills, though, we don't do that. We drop everything into them and we bury everything, and nothing can biodegrade. That's why you'll have
if they biodegrade, well, also if they biodegrade, it presents a safety hazard for those working because of the gaseous byproducts of the biodegradation, and also the instability of the hills. Where I'm from in Ohio, we've got Rumpke Hill, which is this mountain of garbage. And if it were to collapse, it would cause extreme damage to surrounding infrastructure.
Yeah, one of the biggest landfills in the U.S. is here in Whittier, just outside of just probably north of Brea over here north of
I've worked there. I've worked there.
And so, yeah, they're designed to not biodegrade. They're designed not to compost properly. So you'll have people that'll do that. They actually, to check how everything is, they actually they dive into it with these pressurized suits and they dig these holes to see how everything is. And yeah, they're like, oh, we pulled up this hot dog from 50 years ago. Dude, I can't leave a hot dog outside for 3 days without it starting to biodegrade. But if it's surviving in a landfill, it's because we're designing them not to compost. So the argument that the bags didn't biodegrade was a farce. Of course they don't in a landfill because nothing does in a landfill. So yeah,
whereas when exposed to sunlight, most petroleum products, when exposed to UV radiation and direct sunlight, will biodegrade very quickly.
But it's sort of the issue.
I'm sure you guys have left a plastic bag or a plastic bottle outside, and when you went back to get it, it became brittle.
Oh yeah.
That's with all the biomass in the ocean that's been building up in those big garbage piles in the middle of the ocean where the currents are creating these islands of garbage. They're noticing that all this plastic is being ground up into essentially sand because it is biodegrading. I don't think these new bags are going to change any of that. And from what I personally see, people buy bags just as frequently as they used to take the free ones. The only difference is people just bitch about it. I have to pay for this, and the money goes to the company that's providing the bags.
And now I got 100.
So it's not going to some great environment.
I never remember to grab them before I go to the store, and now I feel bad to throw them away because they're supposed to be reusable, and I've got 100 of them.
Yeah,
I'm in my pantry.
I'm the guy who puts all his groceries in his cargo pants.
Mm-hmm.
So it all goes in the bag. I'm like, nope, back into the shopping cart. I'll just load it out of the car.
Yeah,
I'm the guy that carries everything loosely in his arms and tries not to drop things, but still manages to drop things.
I can't do it. I gotta get the bags. I gotta get on with my day. But anyway, so
some of us aren't evil environment destroying monsters such as you.
So welcome, Josh, to the show.
But
thank you.
We are we're going to get to the climate change and the hurricane. A lot of the false information being spread about that in a little bit. But for now, for our tech topic that we like to get to, iPhone X was just released. iPhone 9.
The iPhone Galaxy S8, you mean?
Yeah, you'll get your chance there, sir. All right. iPhone X, fucking a nice cheap price of $999 for anyone that's going to want to get it when it comes out in October. It's going to be using facial recognition software
that's misleading. That's misleading. It's going to ship sometime in 2018.
Oh, is it? Well, it's all right. So pre-order in October?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I did my research, as you can tell. So the new iPhone was just announced. Pre-sale goes in October. Facial recognition. Now they're going to have a database of everyone's face, which kind of creeps me out a little bit. I don't think
care.
Anyone should have that.
My phone already does it. I glance at my phone and it unlocks for me.
I didn't look at the tech specs, but I don't know if that's going to be the case because with the Touch ID, it wasn't stored on Apple servers; it was just on your phone. So there's a good chance.
Okay.
They got rid of that though. They got rid of Touch ID on this one.
No. But I'm saying, with the facial recognition will likely be the same thing, where it'll be stored locally on your phone, but not on their server.
Yeah, that's what Android phones have been doing since 2011, 2012. When it was Android. I think 4.0 they released it. So
yeah, we thought
it's been a minute.
we thought our text messages and our emails were safe until WikiLeaks came out and said that they're being stored in Utah somewhere.
Yeah, Apple.
But Apple, I guess, has been pretty good because with that one FBI case that came about when they were trying to unlock that phone and they couldn't, and then Apple was like, "Fuck you, we're not gonna let you unlock the phone anyways." So I guess they're pretty good about that kind of stuff in that aspect. But then again, they could be storing a database of everyone's face, and I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a little.
Maybe it's a conspiracy.
We've already given them our faces with Facebook.
It's true.
The NSA has got us all tagged anyways.
Yeah, you can't really outrun that. There's like nothing you can do. If you go to a Walmart or you go to a grocery store, you go to an ATM, your face is there. They could find you.
Have you seen that everywhere now with the self-checkout?
With the what?
Self-checkout at all the grocery stores now. Now they have monitors in front of it. Like they're videotaping you as you're checking out now. It's the first place I saw it was Lowe's. Now it's at Walmart and Target. Everywhere around me now where you have self-checkout, they have a little display that's probably 7 inches across that it's like it shows you like you're being recorded. It's as you're checking out.
Yeah, so you can't steal anything.
I still live in the ghetto, so not that I'm encouraging any of our listeners.
Valley, don't you?
No, I don't. No, I live. I'm equidistant between Sacramento and San Francisco, so I'm in the ghetto.
Huh. Well, anyways,
for any of you listeners at home, I'm not encouraging you to do this, but in my years in grocery retail, one of the most common ways I've seen self-checkouts being manipulated that way was people would ring up their liquor as bananas and just weigh their liquor as bananas and put it in their bag, and it doesn't trip the weight sensor because it's produce and it's weighed at the scale on the self-checkout, so they end up paying 10 cents a pound for liquor.
But you can't self-checkout liquor. Legally you can't.
What I'm saying though is they're not ringing the liquor up though; they're ringing it up as bananas.
Yeah, you'd have to have nobody watch. Like in the stores all around us, there's always somebody in the self-checkout area, and they pop people for that all the time. Like, hey, you can't use the liquor in self-checkout. Go to aisle 4.
Oh, yeah. So you can't even, same thing in mine. Like you have to push a button and they come in and open the screen and then they take the bottle and, this will be in register 1. So you can't even grab the bottle where I live.
Ours are all ghetto and they don't pay attention to it. I can ring up liquor at my local store. It'll ring it up and then it'll have them come over and
if it was ghetto, then people would be stealing liquor and you would have this policy in place.
They do. They do steal liquor though.
So they just don't.
I done did seen it. I seen it with my own 2 eyes.
Anyways, the iPhone X. What's an OLED? What does OLED mean? Why is that better than regular LED? I don't know, but they're going to have an OLED screen.
OLED or AMOLED?
OLED. I didn't do
well. So for everyone that's curious of what it's going to look like, go to your local phone store, check out the Samsung Galaxy S8 and check out that screen, because Samsung's making the iPhone screens for the current or for the X. So if you want to know what it's going to look like,
you're going to get your turn here, buddy. All right, we understand.
Organic vitamin diode.
Okay, it's organic now.
Yeah, that's what it says.
What does that mean? Is it also free range, gluten free?
No.
It's going to look like it's from nature.
Organic compound that emits light in response to electrical output. So yeah, it's actually it's a film of organic compounds.
So is this going to?
But is it vegan?
No. It's made in China. It can't be vegan.
Increase or decrease the lithium farms that are going on in Africa?
It does absolutely jack shit for it.
All right, that's another topic for another day. And also,
as long as we're using lithium-ion batteries or lithium polymer batteries, we're going to be influenced or creating more and more demand for those lithium farms over in Africa.
And it was like
until graphene. That brings us back, Travis. That brings us back to one of our first episodes with me on, which brings up graphene superconductors.
Huh.
Supercapacitors as well. So until we have supercapacitance in our batteries, lithium farms are going to keep growing. But what was that you were saying, bud?
The iPhone's 8. They actually announced the 8 and the Plus. I was looking it up. The Plus, it's $1,000 or $1149. Your option is 64 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes worth of data. Does
it have expandable memory?
No, of course not. $1,000 for my phone. That's not going to happen. I don't like phone calls that much.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
I got mine came with 64 gigs. It was $850 retail. I paid $750 after $100 rebate, and then it's expandable up to 250 gigs additional. So
I feel like
I don't understand
the amount that I use my phone. I feel like mostly if I pay for a new iPhone, I'm just basically that's my user fee to use Facebook. I mean, it's so expensive now.
I use fancy apps and I do a lot of stuff on my phone. I'm doing this podcast from my phone, but I haven't used even a third of the memory on my phone.
I'm all out.
I don't know what people are needing.
It's people that do a lot of pictures.
200 gigs for. Yeah, but I mean, my phone shoots 4K video. I don't think it's.
Oh, so let's talk about your phone now, Mr. Rebel.
It's the cheaper iPhone, basically. It's a cheaper iPhone with TouchSense. So I can still get in
battery
with my fingerprint ID.
You can keep that bitch plugged in.
Yeah, oh no, my phone dies after 20 hours of use. Oh no.
When I had Android, that shit would die towards the end of its run.
I have to try and get this. I have to try and get this thing charges in an hour, and I have to try and get it to die.
That has not been my experience. I've had my one iPhone for a long time.
On my phone, I can
go through
lower
Androids like fucking underwear.
I can lower the video quality of my screen. I can drop my the pixel ratio on my screen. I can drop the definition of the phone, so I can bring it down to just regular HD on the screen, and that saves my battery life by like 2 hours. Just by now my phone screen's only high definition, not ultra high definition.
I would do that too, man. But I would start work, and by the end of the day, my phone would be dead. With the iPhone, it's not the case.
Have you had a flagship Samsung though?
I used to get them when they first came out.
Have you had a flagship phone?
What the hell does
Have you had a flagship phone? It means it's their fancy phone. It's their top of the line phone.
I've had them.
Because
they work
iPhone's
great.
Phones
their
are their
battery
top of
ends
the
up dying. It's like it has a life to it. It has an exact life to it.
All batteries have a life.
How can you kill that which has no life?
I live in the Apple ecosystem because I use their mail app and I use a desktop and a laptop. They're things, and I don't care about Google and Droid and everything else. One, I will not. Android is a Google product, and I hate Google. I hate them with a passion. I hate as a company. They started out with their slogan of "Don't be evil," and yet they turn over information on Chinese dissidents and Christians in China, and they censor the internet for the Chinese. So they have literally become what they said they were not going to be, which is exactly that, evil. And so, I also have a grudge with them, is that they're one of the biggest patent trolls in the industry when it comes to how they create things. And remember, it wasn't until the iPhone that we had smartphones. Before the iPhone came out, we had the top phones at the time were a BlackBerry, which sucked balls, and a Motorola Razr.
Leave BlackBerries alone. I liked my BlackBerry.
Obama.
Those were the worst phones. And it was just, I remember trying to, no joke, I was trying to send a picture on Facebook or whatever it was when I had a BlackBerry from Hollywood, and I could not send a photo. It would not do it. No resolution, didn't matter, could not send it. The minute I got an iPhone, I'm like, oh, it's sent, done. You know, and it was just one of those things. It just worked.
What I think is funny though is every time Apple releases a new feature, and I use new very figuratively here, Apple fanboys constantly squee over it. Oh, it's got face sensing. It can sense my face. It's like, but Android's had that for 5 years.
Correct.
Oh,
but
I can slide around on my keyboard. I can draw to text. Like I can just trace over the letters. Yeah, that's swipe, and Android's had that since 2011.
But fanboys are going to do that no matter what. I mean, you're never going to get rid of that.
But it's definitely not as pervasive as in the Apple community, where Apple will constantly release features that have been on Android for years and talk about it like it's some new big thing. Apple's just now getting Bluetooth 5.0. Until
with better battery life.
With better battery life. And, by the time it ships in 2018, I'm sure Samsung's going to put out a far better phone again.
And how many companies are working on Android phones? How many people
a ton of companies.
Exactly. You've got a bunch of different companies.
How many companies? Yeah. So how many companies can Apple look at and try and rip off?
Well, how many companies looked at Apple and ripped them off first? Again, before the iPhone, Samsung wasn't doing anything worth note. Either was LG, either was Google. None of those companies were doing anything worthwhile.
The fact that those companies got so far ahead in such a short time just shows that, like, for instance, okay, so Apple removes the aux port on their phones. They initially say that it's to make it more waterproof. My phone proves that that's bullshit because mine still has an aux port and it's still more waterproof than the iPhone. But they remove it and say that, and then it comes out after someone cracks one of their phones open and they realize, oh no, they did that because they had to move the chips around for the new camera, which still isn't as good as the Samsung one. What gives? Why would they lie to their customers? Then they go, well, okay, so what we did it for is because aux is such a outdated and awful technology, and we need to advance and start using Bluetooth more. My phone still has an aux cord, but it also has Bluetooth 5.0, which no iPhone has right now. So I can dual broadcast to two Bluetooth devices. I can have two Bluetooth speakers. I can have a Bluetooth headset and a Bluetooth speaker. I can run to a Bluetooth headset and have it connected to a car. Why didn't Apple invest more in their Bluetooth?
And wasn't it Samsung televisions?
They were going to remove aux.
Hold on.
Hey, let him talk. Let him talk.
Wasn't it Samsung televisions that were spying on people and recording everything that they were doing? Every company lies to their customers. Every company does. That's the great thing about an open marketplace.
I believe 4 years ago, though, over 500,000 Apple customers had their credit card info leaked, their first and last names leaked. They had all of their information put on the internet because they'd used such flimsy for their huge databases that they weren't even telling their customers they were keeping on them, and they were easily hacked.
No, hold on.
With their credit card info.
Hold on. Back up. They weren't easily hacked. You've got literal cities in China and Russia that are hacking industries. OPM, the Office of Professional Management, was hacked. Equifax was just hacked. It's just a matter of where they point their target at, or what target they aim at. That's going to get hacked.
But do you remember when the Apple iCloud got hacked? This was after that had happened. Do you remember when iCloud got hacked?
iCloud wasn't hacked. That whole thing with the celebrity photos and everything. That wasn't an iCloud hack. That was brute force. They were going onto people's Wikipedias and pulling up their pets' names and their kids' names. And people you ever seen the movie Hackers? Don't use the password God. It was the big thing there. That's how that happened. The celebrity hack, that huge hack, had nothing to do with iCloud and everything to do with people using shoddy passwords. That was just brute force. But again, the media
I'll take your word on that one.
The media ran it as iCloud got hacked, but iCloud didn't get hacked. That's how most things, that's like even the WikiLeaks stuff with Donald Rumsfeld and everybody else, that was all just brute force. That was, let's pull his kids' names, birthdays, anniversaries, and hack it that way. That's how most hacking takes place. So Apple took a lot of heat for something that wasn't their fault. But my point was, in an open market, we have the opportunity to buy the iPhone or not buy the iPhone, buy the Samsung or not buy the Samsung.
That's
capitalism.
True. The funny thing is now, though, whether you buy the iPhone or not, you are buying the Samsung.
Some outdated technology that got beefed up.
And you're buying someone else's patent and everything else. If you buy a Leica, you're buying Kodak. If you're buying a Nikon, you're buying a Sony. I mean, everybody uses different things. You can't. Every company, there's cross-pollination because of trademark law and patent.
Well, I know. For the longest time, if you bought, say, an Apple compute or a Macintosh, you were technically buying a Motorola.
A processor.
Well, now if you buy the fancy new iPhone, you're buying a Samsung, design, because they've got Samsung manufacturing the screens to their phones now. They're not even manufacturing it in-house while borrowing the patent. They are having Samsung.
You've actually got that. You've actually got that reversed. They're actually having Samsung manufacture something they're designing. Samsung isn't designing the screen for the iPhone. Apple's designing it, and Samsung has created it.
They're using Samsung's patent for the Infinity screen, which is the screen I've got on my phone.
Then it's a licensing agreement.
You're aware of that, right?
But I don't pay attention to the phones on that. I just don't care. To me, I think it's the dumbest thing that Apple could have done, because it's the one thing I fucking hate about my phone. well, we'll see. We'll see when the pre-orders are done. We'll see how many.
It's the biggest complaint. The biggest complaint about this phone and this technology is how easily it shatters. And there's no way to make this more durable.
Well, we'll see when they after they're on the market, because that's going to be the big tell. If people hate,
we're going to have to wait for. And where they definitely fucked up is that they did these their manufacturing process is going to take so much longer, and they're having people pay for phones that they won't receive for another 3 months. Now, with the dedicated Apple fan base, I'm sure it'll sell fine, but I think a lot of people are going to switch to other companies because they're releasing their 2017 flagship in 2018.
But that's the case on everything. Look at the pre-orders for Tesla. Look at the Mini Coopers when they came out. Look at anything. Whenever a new product comes out, supply demand outstrips the supply, and people don't get it right away. I mean, they just had that DJI, the drone company, now owns I think Hasselblad, which was one of the premier camera companies in the world, because Hasselblad couldn't deliver their camera because of demand, and they had to get another investor, and DJI came in and basically bought them because they had way more pre-orders than they could ever deliver. That's just the nature of technology nowadays. You have a global market share where people want them all over the world. Well,
that's dangerous. I know we're bird walking here a little bit, but that's dangerous territory for any business, though, because do you remember the hypercolor shirts back in the 90s?
No.
The color changing shirts, they were heat sensitive ink on the shirts, and they would. The reason that company went out of business was they had so much demand for their product that they invested too much capital in production and ended up oversizing their production. So basically getting underwater on their production side of things. And then they were able to get all their pre-orders. They were able to get all their pre-orders done.
It's not going to happen
to their backlog
Apple
of orders.
With the iPhone.
Apple's far too. But I feel like this phone was a bad choice for them to release when they did. They should have released it next year. They should have announced it next year.
That phone they were going to announce it next year because it's the 10th anniversary. That's why it's the iPhone 10. But that phone, think about how many phones they're going to make. And if they are using a Samsung screen, think about how good that is for you as a Samsung user, because of how much money Samsung is getting because Apple licensing their screen. So instead of being upset that they're taking something from
Samsung, I'm not upset at all. I just find it funny.
That's a great thing for Samsung. Well, no, but that's always been.
It benefits Android users more than it benefits Apple users, and it makes me feel bad for Apple users.
Unless Apple users like the screen.
Don't feel bad for us, bro.
A lot of Apple users are complaining. A lot of Apple users are complaining because they're getting rid of the physical home button, and a lot of people switched to Apple because they liked the physical home button as opposed to most Androids switching to a digital one.
It's got to be there. Just it's going to be a digital version of the home button. Seems like
it is.
And people complained when you no longer had when all these horseless carriages came around and put the blacksmiths on.
I know, it's crazy.
They like these features.
I've been saying that for years. When Apple users would say, "How can you stand not having a physical home button? Why do you like the digital one?" I'm like, well, I like that my buttons flip on the side. I like having 3 of them instead of 1. I like the versatility it gives me, and I don't really need a physical button that can break from overuse. I'd rather just have a digital one where I just press on a touch screen. I like having more screen.
One thing to always keep in mind on these sort of things, though, is that a lot of the arguments and a lot of the things that you talk about.
You're making the argument to me that I made to Apple users years ago when I switched to Android.
No, I'm making the argument that it doesn't matter, because the issue is that most things online are people sitting at home bitching about everything, and end users. I mean, the market tells you how people care about things or not. Apple has the number one selling smartphone on the market. Why? Because there's too many competitors in the Android field, and people are either going to buy a Samsung or an LG or Motorola or whatever the case may be.
So is competition a bad thing for innovation?
No, competition's a great thing, but if you expect everybody to just sit on their laurels and now think with the way the patent trolls work and patent lawsuits work, Apple can't create their own screen like that because they'll get sued by Samsung. If they bite off of anything like that, you're going to get sued.
We're going to have to do another episode on patent trolls just because of the recent developments that have been happening in that world with certain courts that would traditionally be in favor of promoting that sort of behavior, now starting to change tunes and cracking down on patent trolls.
Okay, with that being
Future
said,
episode.
With that being said, I think we've cracked that nut and spit away the shell. Let's move on to very, very more important things. And this time, just as a timestamp for this episode, America has been hit by 2 devastating hurricanes. As you know, in the last episode, we talked with somebody living in the Houston area who couldn't see the pavement in front of his house, basically had a river running between him and the neighbor across the street. And now we have had Irma hit Florida, which has been even worse. It was pretty much like the entire state of Florida was covered by the storm. Pretty devastating stuff. I wish we had somebody to talk to from Florida. That may change here in the near future. We can't get a first-party perspective, but we can tell you that the storm surge in Southwest Florida was near 15 feet. So you just have to imagine a 15-foot wall of the ocean. For anyone that doesn't know, then you've pretty much been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks. The floods are devastating. The winds were crazy.
Well, let's put it this way. The hurricane is battering the Atlantic coast, but on the Gulf Coast, you've got manatees being beached. So this thing's hitting hard enough on the opposite side of the state where it's already hit a lot of landmass. It's hitting it hard enough to beach manatees. These
manatees are
big. They're like miniature whales. They're sea cows.
Right.
They're these cute little critters that swim around and eat.
It's crazy. 5 to 6 million people without power. Winds were reported. It took they had a lot of predictions about where this thing was gonna hit, whether it was gonna hit the east coast of Florida. It ended up taking a left-hand turn slightly and just fucking. I mean, it couldn't have been probably worse. I'm not sure where it's at right now. We're not here to talk about the hurricane, though. We are here to
talk about the agendas behind.
There have been
twisting
a lot of people and news sources have been attributing this to what is now being called climate change because global warming was shot down after the Earth cooled for a little bit. So now it's called climate change. Everyone wants to attribute this to the waters being warmer in that area, and it's the apocalypse. It's the end of days. As far as some news sources are concerned, but we're here to tell you that maybe not be the case, right? So,
well, for one, most scientific institutions will back me up when I say hurricanes aren't affected by climate change. They're not. You're using anecdotes to try and prove your point, even though you're usually the one saying, well, you can't use anecdotal evidence.
The fundamental.
I want to pick into the each topic separately, but I just want to make a few factual statements before we get into any discussions on this, because I have a feeling having you on is going to make these discussions a blast. But I used to live in Florida. I've been through hurricanes in Florida. It sucks, but this isn't the first time hurricanes this size or this number of hurricanes have hit Florida or hit the U.S. in general. Just, it's happened before. So now go ahead.
No, the two issues with that. One, whenever they talk about hurricanes or any weather event, they always talk about within the recorded record or within the last 50 years, or the case may be. It's like I think Irma was number 3 in the recorded hurricanes. We have no idea, obviously, what happened before it was recorded. But the problem starts when you start using the terminology of people who are pushing essentially a religion. So the very premise behind climate change is a stupid one, owing to the fact that the climate changes. All right, 20,000 years ago, Orange County was underwater. Okay, where I live was ocean. The entire Earth has always changed long before the Industrial Revolution came along, long before any qualifier can happen. And the problem you run into is that you're arguing against people who are religious fanatics. They claim not to be. A lot of them will claim to be atheist or agnostic, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, they're talking religious dogma. It's
a mental disorder.
Everybody agrees with us.
Yeah, they still subscribe to the...
It's here in California.
They still subscribe to the same cultish mentality as most religions.
The carbon tax in California is nothing more than an indulgence in the medieval church of, hey, you've sinned, pay us a certain amount of money and we'll make your sins go away. And you have that issue. Yep. But the problem with the entire climate change argument is the data doesn't support what they're saying. And if it did, they would release the data. When NASA and the National Ocean, when the NOAA, when NASA and NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, said they would not release their data, it proves that they do not have the data to back up what they're saying. When Michael Mann he ended up suing, I think, Mark Levin, because Mark Levin talked about the hockey stick data and their whole hide the decline thing. Yeah, it was that issue where they're literally fabricating data, and then if you ask basic questions about the science, it immediately falls apart. And I can pose simple questions.
They're also using stacked science.
Well, no, that's absolutely that's the point, though, is that by buying into their argument, like you can say hurricanes aren't affected by climate change, but the argument there fails immediately because you first have to concede that climate change is a thing.
I do think that climate change is a thing, and I do think that it is affected very minuscule, but I do believe it is slightly affected by human carbon output. But where I wholeheartedly disagree is the same reason I got labeled a crazy alarmist conspiracist is back when they were still calling it global warming. I refused to concede that the Earth was warming. I said to them that it is not warming, it is changing. And they're like, no, you're just a crazy right-wing nut. And I'm like, well, first off, for me to be a crazy right-wing nut, I would have to be right-wing in the first place. Secondly, there hasn't been sufficient evidence to prove to me that the Earth is on a warming trend. However, there has been sufficient enough evidence to prove to me that the Earth is changing and that human impact is a thing. However, individual action would do absolutely nothing to correct it.
But that's still
nations like China as a whole have an environmental impact and have an impact on the atmosphere, and the atmosphere has an impact on climate.
Two things for me. There's no way to quantify or to put a number on how man has an impact on the climate either way. There's nobody that can say, yes, it's 10%. Hold on. No, it's 10%. It's 15%. It's 2.5. There's no way to put a hand on it. So to make a big issue and to create all these laws and regulations for something that we have no idea really how much it affects. And two, we've only been keeping track of weather for 200, maybe 300 years. And how long has the Earth been here? It's been here for
a blip, a speck.
So how the hell do we even know? The Earth has survived, asteroids, volcanoes, Well, Ice Age.
Well,
periods
the
of
science of, say, like the output of like the Industrial Revolution, it's pretty obvious that it has an impact on climate. Acid
How
rain.
is it pretty obvious though? I don't. That's
acid rain.
Explain.
Acid rain's a thing of the past.
I've never seen acid rain personally.
Not in China. Not in China. My point is that, or rather, I believe climate change is a thing. I just think it's mostly natural, and the little human impact there is wouldn't be affected on whether I change the light bulbs in my house to CFLs or not, even though I use LEDs. My point is that to have any real human impact on making or changing climate change, as they want to say, you'd have to like glass China as a whole to have even the slightest impact on climate.
They've actually just passed reform that they're going to stop making carbon emitting cars by 2020 or something like that. That's probably wrong. But
yeah, well,
they just passed something, so they're working on it.
Once again, individual action makes absolutely no difference.
I don't know. I feel like, again, by conceding the idea that saying that, like, I believe in climate change. First of all, believe isn't science, and second, the problem is that you end up with an issue where that's like saying, well, I believe in light change because it goes from noon to midnight. Well, obviously the climate changes. That's an unquantifiable issue. It's like it's changed 1,000 times in 4 billion years. So it's a nonsensical argument to be making. Obviously,
it makes me a lot more approachable when I say, yeah, climate change is a thing, just not the way you know it.
I don't care about approachability. I care about facts, and that's my problem with the whole climate change argument.
The fact is the climate is changing.
Yeah, it's always changing. It never stays the same.
But you have to be able to
exactly.
You're talking about
the only constant in this entire universe is that everything will change.
Yeah, but again, you can't argue policy on that premise. That's like saying from noon to 3, it gets
but I don't believe in policy in the first place.
Alex, let him talk.
But the issue is that the minute you concede that, you've already lost. The minute you concede, yes, the climate is changing, now you've already conceded the argument, and now all of the policy things, like here in California with cap and trade and the bags and everything else, you've already conceded the climate is changing, and that's like, well, yeah, and water is wet. Obviously, the climate has changed, and it always will change, and nothing else will change that. But that's not a scientific argument.
I'm getting older
to be made based on policy. Yeah, it's such a nonsensical issue.
Me too.
So let's go back to where they might have an argument. Okay, if the globe is warming, if the waters are being warmed, then that creates more moisture and more of a devastating hurricane, right?
No, NOAA has actually came out and said no, that's not true.
Well, NOAA also hides their data on climate science, so they're liars anyways.
Yeah, but if the NOAA is defending the stance that climate change pushers are holding, it's at least something that the people who believe in it will have to acknowledge, because it's the same data that they do release, or the same things they are saying.
You're assuming
that they're using. Okay, so if let's say someone believes that all Democrats love minorities because Bill Clinton loves minorities, but if I then go back and bring up the laws that Bill Clinton passed while he was in office that negatively impacted minorities,
loves having sex with them,
it would debase their point, because I would say, well, actually, the same people you're using as an example of how loving and caring your party is are the same people that imprisoned more of those people you claim to support.
You want me to prove you wrong?
If the same organization that you're trying to point to back up your claims about the climate are the same ones saying that the hurricanes are not affected by the climate changing, then where the hell is your point coming from? You're making things up.
Yeah, you're missing an issue here, though. You're misunderstanding that people are playing logic and not Calvin ball. The problem here is that the people that you're arguing against aren't going to listen when you say that. The same. Okay, so I can show you a chart that shows you the 11 most Economically distressed cities, it's 11 because 2 tied, but it's technically the 10 most economically destroyed cities in America. And I can show you that the Democratic Party has controlled them for a minimum of 30, if not 60 years, lock, stock, and barrel, all the way from local city council to the governorship. And yet, the pervasive mentality is Democrats care about the poor and the children, and Republicans don't. I can show you people today arguing about Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Jose, and Cocca right now about how it's climate change, and climate change is real because of consensus, because it's consensus when that 97% scientific number has been debunked 100 times. I can show you study after study showing that the wage gap is a farce, and people still run with it.
Yeah.
You're assuming that people who are arguing emotion care one iota about facts, and they don't.
George Bush does not care about black people.
It's that problem is that you have to understand that a lot of people that you're arguing against, a lot of people that are making these issues are making it from an emotional standpoint, and they don't care what the facts say.
I don't think that all of them are lost, though. I've seen even personally where I've had people who were pushing for Obama through and through, and I go, well, you were aware that he started more overseas conflicts than Bush, his predecessor, did, right? And they go, huh? No, he didn't. And I go, well, actually, here's a country. He only did drone strikes on little innocent babies in this country, though, so if you want to count that as a conflict or not, you don't have to. But here's another country, here's another.
Correct, but the thing is, like, I didn't say everybody. Yeah, exactly. Facts don't care about your feelings, but the thing is, I didn't say everybody.
The difference is I'm trying not to deal in absolutes. I'm trying to be. I used to be a lot more like you, but I found that the more I deal in absolutes, the less change I can make. So.
But what absolutes am I dealing in?
That if you acknowledge that the climate is changing, you're making a concession, and therefore enabling. But I don't think that's always the case, because I've convinced people of certain viewpoints just based on using their own data.
But again, my point was that
the wage gap, for instance, the easiest way to debunk the wage gap is to call forth the sources that they're using and go, well, actually, your own source has in asterisks that this is comparing all full-time workers to all full-time workers, and that's not fair, because it's not comparing actual hours worked. And when you do that, you narrow that gap down an extra 20%. Now you're dealing with maybe a 7% change, and that doesn't equate in differences in time held in the or in tenure in the career.
We're going. We're getting off the topic here.
Yeah, but
how's he dealing in absolutes with as far as the climate is changing? Yeah, we all agree with that. I
would rather try and take a more approachable, stance with these people and try and convince them using their own logic and their own feelings that they're wrong. And it is possible, because I've done it. Using their logic, which is based on feelings as opposed to actual logic,
if you were going to give me
convince them that they're not.
If you're going to give me an estimate on how much man has an effect on the climate changing, what percentage would you say?
Like the individual man or actual man-made impact?
Human beings as a whole on planet Earth.
I wouldn't give it more than I personally, just from what I've seen and what I've read and what I know about geology, I'd give it less than 1%. All
right, so I don't even understand why we're arguing about what here. We're all seem
because I do believe that man has an impact, but it's just so negligible that you'd have to wipe out entire countries to see any impact.
What do you think? What's the percentage that Al Gore thinks that human beings have an impact on the globe? What would you say, Josh?
110.
All of it.
110.
But here's my point. But you sort of missed my point. My point was that by conceding the argument, you've already lost. And the reason I say that isn't that people can't be convinced, because we've all had well, not all of us, but a lot of us have had conversations over the years where we've talked to people and we've used people who actually care about facts and care about logic and care about data, and we can change their minds. But there's a lot of people that are purely emotional that you'll never change.
I'm a consummate flip-flopper.
Yeah, but the issue
I'm a consummate flip-flopper.
Is that when you say I believe in climate change, and I believe that man has an impact. Immediately, it's, aha, I've got you. So you believe that man has an impact. So wouldn't you rather do something than not do nothing? So let me do X, Y, Z.
But I also preface it.
Let him finish.
I preface it every time with, I don't think individual action makes any difference.
But we're not talking about individual
scientifically.
Action. We're talking about a nation of 300 and some odd million people, or a state of 40 million people in California.
The U.S. changing anything wouldn't make a fucking difference.
China and India are the big players, I think.
China is the biggest player in the pollution of the world, and they're not going to do shit unless they want to do shit about it.
Correct, but you
can't force a nation to do shit.
But you're in a state that constantly passes taxes and constantly passing legislation to tax you in order to change something. I
constantly speak out against it, and I constantly speak with these hippies that vote for the shit, and I ask them the facts. Do you really think that what you're doing is making a difference? Well, here's this, and this. And by the way, that money that you insisted people pay for their paper bags is going to oil companies that are making more plastics and petroleum products. Because one of the largest oil companies in the entire country is based out of California, the Chevron Corporation.
Chevron,
but let's even avoid that. How much tax money have they given that has gone to war? When you mention that they're killing innocent brown children with their gas tax, you turn them against themselves.
The gas tax wouldn't go to anything like that.
Any money that goes to government frees up other money to go kill other people. Doesn't matter at what level of government that money is given, it always frees up more money that ends up greasing the palms of the people
incorrect in the fact that I agree that money is fungible. You're not wrong there, but the problem is that we have a $20 trillion deficit. That isn't money that we had that went elsewhere. That's money we just borrow. The 102 Tomahawk missiles that we launched into Libya to destabilize Gaddafi and allow ISIS to kick everyone's ass over there, that wasn't money that came from taxes. That was money we borrowed from the Fed.
So that's the issue. There's a national defense budget that they pay for all that shit with.
But our country's at an overall deficit.
But no,
we're not in debt. We're in a deficit. Our overall budget puts us in continuous debt.
No, I thought that had to do with borrowing from other countries.
As long as our budget isn't balanced, as long as our budget is not balanced and we're not producing a surplus of money to pay off our debt, we are in a deficit. And as long as we're in a deficit, every Tomahawk missile, just as he said, is being funded exclusively by a private bank known as the Federal Reserve.
Oh, God.
To answer your point, Travis, the issue with the budget, yes, technically we have a military budget and all of that, but the unfortunate side is that agencies like the Pentagon can't be audited per the IRS because they've lost too much money. We don't know where the money went, so we can't audit them, so we don't know where the money goes. So and that's where it all becomes an issue.
And it's also coming from like places like China where we have bonds that we still need to pay them back with. Is that correct?
Correct. We're actually still paying for World War I.
So this was an interesting topic that it was on the docket, but we never really discussed. But yeah, the federal and it just went over 20 trillion. They just added $333 billion to it. And the scary part is that I don't think anybody freaking realize this should be on the top of everyone's list of the problems that are wrong with this country right now. It's not racism. It's not fucking whatever they tell you on MSNBC. It's the fact that if this thing blows, that the dollar is going to become worthless, and we're going to enter a state of martial law. It's going to be fucking civil war in the streets, and the dollar's you're going to go to your ATM, and you're not going to be able to get money out. And if you do, it's going to be worthless. I mean, this is like the worst case scenario for America.
Our money's already worthless.
That could ever happen. This is the worst thing that could ever happen, and nobody seems to fucking. They're still caught up in Kim Kardashian and a black kid that got shot by the cops, but let's not worry about what the fucking are the value that our money has. I
can bring that to a local level. I asked back when on the podcast that Sean and I run. I asked during that interview with Newman. I asked him, okay, so the state is now raising $52 billion a year or $52 billion over 10 years, $5.2 billion in new taxes per year in order to fix roads. Ostensibly, that was their argument. It won't go to that. It's going to go to Jerry Brown's fucking shoot nowhere. It's going to go to high-speed rail. But the premise was to fix roads. And I asked him, I said, okay, well, based on the numbers that I have, based on how much money we spend in federal, so we spend 18 cents a gallon in federal tax. We get about 15 cents per gallon back from the feds. We spend 30 cents a gallon locally. We had a bond back in 2000 for like $20 billion. So based on my numbers, over the last 10 years, we've spent about $120 billion in taxes or bonds, ostensibly for the roads, which we haven't repaired. And I said, okay, so what was done when SB 1 was passed, when you voted for this, what was done to fix all of this money that was wasted, to change the system, to make sure it won't happen again? Who was fired? What agency was reorganized? What bureaucracy changed? What happened to show us that you care about good government, that something would change? And his answer was, well, I wasn't here then. It's not my problem. I need to look forward.
He didn't.
And the immediate response is,
he didn't have one.
He had no answer. The whole argument is like, but you're here now. Like, if you told me that, you know what, I have a housekeeper, Olga from Switzerland, and she's stealing from me every time she cleans my house, and she's been doing that for a year. And I just found out because every time I leave my wallet on the dresser, she takes $20 out of it. So I'm going to keep leaving my wallet on the dresser, and she's going to keep taking money out of it because it's not my responsibility to fix the problems.
Fire her. And that's stop leaving your wallet out.
But yeah, that would be a solution.
One of the two.
It's
theoretical.
California, it's a theoretical.
Yeah, we don't fix anything. Nobody gets fired. Nobody gets held accountable. Nothing changes, and it only gets worse as things get bigger. You look at from the city, it's one problem. County, state.
This is the first state I've lived where I actually cared about local politics, because the local politics here are so fucking bonkers. You see the people that make it in office. And you question just the mental state of the people. You question the mental state of the people that they allow to vote.
Try living in a city where one of your city council members, the mayor of last year, is actually a sitting lobbyist right now. We're not talking about a revolving.
Try living.
We're not talking about a revolving door. We're talking.
Try living within 10 minutes.
We're talking about
living within 20 minutes of Sacramento.
Yeah, we're talking about somebody. Yeah, I live that close to LA. We're talking about somebody who is a actual lobbyist, one of the biggest lobbying firms in Southern California, and she's on city council at the same time. Kurt Pringle and Associates. Kurt Pringle used to be mayor of Anaheim, and his lobbying firm is one of the biggest in Southern California. And our current city council member, Jennifer Fitzgerald, last year's mayor, works for his company. She was a mayor of the town and a lobbyist at the same time.
And this just in, the pensions just got increased.
Oh yeah, it never changes.
Nice.
It gets, but to go back to the whole issue previously is that the whole thing when you get into an issue, the reason why an issue like going back to like climate change or anything else matters is that that's how we distract people. We tell people say, I don't ever remember it being this hot in August before, and you think. August. How do you not remember that? Did you not go outside last year?
The Earth has a fever.
The Earth has a fever. Oh, the temperature of the oceans is warming, so hurricanes in Florida are so much worse. Well, if the temperatures of the oceans were really warming so catastrophically, we'd have hurricanes in the Pacific.
Think about it, all right? The water's warm. Yeah, it creates
honestly, that's one,
right, bro?
That's one thing I've definitely noticed in California is how all of these people think the ocean is warming rapidly, but have you been in the fucking ocean out here?
The Pacific Ocean's cold as fuck.
I won't, because especially up here, I will freeze.
I surf, and I don't mind it, but people I've watched people get in and be like, oh, they tiptoe away, they get their toe in the water.
Even when I was living down in like Ventura, I'd go down to Oxnard and try and get in the water. Still too fucking cold.
Yeah, there's a reason why California surfers all wear wetsuits.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's fucking cold.
Yeah, and if you see a guy without a wetsuit on, don't mess with him because he's probably crazy as fuck. There's a logic. Nobody
told me that.
I've been in the water enough times to be like, That guy's not got a wetsuit on. All right, I ain't messing with him.
I grew up spoiled, though. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where you can go out in that water just in a pair of swim trunks and be comfortable for hours, just splashing around, having fun.
Well, warm water hurricanes, bro. Duh.
Yeah. See, we wear wetsuits because we don't have hurricanes knocking our federally subsidized houses over.
But see, that's
well,
the other
you do
thing.
have federally subsidized houses.
Climate change is on the top of the list of any fucking dope that watches the mainstream news and that doesn't do their own research and that just fucking hears one person say one thing and then treats it as gold. That's, it's like racism, climate change, fucking poor people have it bad. Like there's this hierarchy, this list that people have that, what my list is kind of like, it does have to do with a little bit with poverty, the disappearing middle class, the fucking federal budget, or the deficit. I mean, to me, those are bigger problems.
And I think we definitely need to do an episode on an economics centered episode on just economics buzzwords: debt, deficit, debt ceiling, what tax reform is, what budget balancing is in government.
Most people
breaking all this stuff down for people.
About it, to be honest with you, I really.
People say to me a lot, "Oh, well, Clinton fixed the deficit," and I said, "Yeah, but did he do shit for the debt?"
Well, here's the problem, though, is that you're running into
his policies not a ticking time bomb.
You run into an issue.
I think they were.
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I mean,
enough people don't. I had somebody tell me that police. Okay, so the numbers are the same around the state, but I can use my city as an example. In Fullerton, 71% of our general fund goes to salaries and pensions. All right, so
that's a problem. Right?
Yeah, and that's all over the place. And I had a lady tell me that police and fire, who are the biggest chunk of that, deserve anything they want because they're heroes. There's no way to argue that. You cannot stop people. Police and fire put out mailers. They buy and sell every one of the politicians. We just had an issue just here in California where they were trying to put teeth into the Public Records Request Act, where if you put a public records request in with the government here in California, they're supposed to respond. If they don't respond, ruh-roh, who cares? There's no teeth to the law. So a bill was going through the legislature. It passed, I think, in the assembly like 98-2, I think is what the number was, like how it passed. It was crazy how well it passed. It got to the state Senate, and it was gutted because the fire union said, we won't back your campaigns if you vote for this, because they don't want transparency in the system. And people don't care because they are heroes they deserve. And so you end up with this issue where you can have all the facts and all the numbers and argue this all the way you want, but at the end of the day, enough people are emotional and don't care that they aren't going to see the issue. And that's where it becomes frustrating.
Do they also pay for firefighters' salaries?
What do you mean?
Who pays for the firefighters? Does the city pay for their salaries?
Here, in my city, yeah. Most city, yeah. So
in my city... continue.
Unless you're a contract city where so here in Orange County, we have Orange County Fire, which is a contract company that deals for this. It's a county level, so it deals with all the county stuff. But then certain cities like Buena Park, whatever, might contract with them and they don't have their own municipal fire department. If you have your own municipal fire department, then your city pays for it and you pay the pensions. And the pensions are what actually is hurting all of our cities, because the pensions are tied into CalPERS, which is an investment company that likes to divest itself of going back to what the issue was earlier, climate change related stuff. They don't want to invest in oil or natural gas or anything that's icky or non-environmental. So if they lose money, the taxpayers are on the hook for how much money they lost. If you were to invest, if you took $100 and you invested it in your 401k, and you invested it poorly and it ended up being worth $20, your 401k is now worth $20. But here in California, that's not how it works. If we if we promise a firefighter $100 for his pension and we invest that $100 and we only get $20 back, the taxpayers have to make up that other $80 to give him the $100 he was promised. And that's fire, police. That's
just funny because here in my town, our fire department is volunteer. I like that.
Which town do you live in?
Saskatoon?
Saskatoon. for the sake of anonymity, I live in Solano County.
I would just say go on to Transparent California one day, type in, find your city on the list, and see who's being paid for fire, because that'll tell you how much money they're actually spending on it. Because
is that site trustworthy?
Yes, it's public records request related. It's based on, I think it's actually a Nevada group that actually runs it, but it's all, the state has to release pension and salary information for all government employees.
I can imagine someone in Nevada would do that just because of how much they're being fucked over right now on selling Los Angeles electricity.
Yeah, no, it's been.
They're bitter.
It's been going on since like 2011, I think, is when they have records back to. So they'll tell you every city, every government employee that's in California, as long as they're responding legally to the requests, it's all on there. You can find out what every person in your city makes just by punching in their name or finding your city. So.
Well, let's hope this cast doesn't ever get out if I decide to run for public office. I think the focus on capitalism and anarchy would probably get me disqualified in the first place, but
So, Josh, are you still gonna? I thought you were gonna run again. Did you decide not to?
The prevailing theory is that I'm going to run in this recall election when they remove Newman, because Josh Newman is going. The way the recalls work is that if 51% of the people vote for the recall, then Newman's out, and then everybody votes for it. Do you want the same with the Gray Davis recall that led to Schwarzenegger being governor? Do you want the recall? Yes, no. If you vote no, then you're done. If you vote yes, then you vote on who do you want to replace the person there. So currently, there are three people who've said they're going to run for the state Senate seat here in District 29. The mayor of Fullerton, the former assembly person Chang, and I've said I would run as well. It's a tough call though, because you're talking about Josh Newman's raised $1.5 million already. He is the highest. He has raised more money than anybody else in the California state legislature because of this recall election. You know, how do you go up against $1.5 million?
And is he a part of the non-existent Republican Party in California? No,
Newman's a Democrat. Newman was the Democrat in the state Senate that gave them the supermajority, allowing them to pass taxes without a single Republican vote.
Huh. But we can all agree that the Republican Party in California is kind of a joke.
They're a joke and a half. They're a joke without a punchline.
I mean, I think the Republican Party in general is a joke, but in California especially, they've got absolutely no backbone.
Yeah, we don't need to go into all that. That's probably a whole nother episode. But I think
it'll have to be.
So what was your biggest beef on climate change, though?
Mine?
For me?
No,
or
for
him?
My big beef on climate change is that it's not. We can't tell how much man has to do with it. And so to create policy around something like that with such little evidence, and it's all...
So I'll give you my favorite question that I like to pose to people who believe in climate change, just because it's fun for me.
Okay.
So gravity, Earth, is a changing system. Okay?
Yes.
On top of that, the number one issue on our planet, as far as the climate is concerned, is the tides. And the tides are directly affected by the lunar cycle. And the moon, on a micro level, moves away from the Earth constantly. It's constantly moving further away. Correct. So you ask them, how are those put into the climate models?
So are you saying that the changing of the gravity has an effect on... climate change?
So the Earth.
Well, what he's saying is that the moon is moving away in small increments, which means that the gravitational pull of the moon is weakening on the Earth's tides.
The gravity of the Earth changes. The moon is moving away. The Earth's tides would therefore be changed by how the gravitational system works and how the moon works, and they don't input any of that into their climate models. So they're putting in an incomplete. They have an incomplete data set based on assumptions.
One could argue that the Earth is heating up and it's melting the poles and it's creating more water. But then again, why would that make for a drastic low tide? I could see how that would make for a more drastic high tide, but for someone that is a surfer and that studies hold on, Alex, Jesus Christ, hold on. For someone that studies the tides and is a surfer, I have noticed that the tides have been getting more drastically higher and lower. Alex, proceed.
Well, with what you said, that would imply that the moon isn't moving away from the Earth, but instead the orbit of the moon is becoming more elliptical, which would create far more sporadic tides. But
it's been exercising? I don't know what you mean by that.
Yes. Rather than being spherical or circular, it becomes more elliptical, more like an oval.
Oh, okay.
So a bigger distance between the periapses and the apoapses of the orbit. So the high point of the orbit ends up being higher and the low point of the orbit being lower, or the difference between the high point and low point of the orbit is increasing, is what that would imply. It wouldn't imply anything about climate, though. It would just imply lunar cycles, which is interesting because we as humans have actually impacted lunar cycles by leaving weight on the moon from the Earth. Man-made, manufactured shit, leaving Earth's overall mass and joining the moon's overall mass, although it's in the nth degree of impact. Kind of like what I think human influenced climate change is.
The big issue is the big point is that we have completely incomplete data sets. So to your point about how humans have a less than 1% impact on the climate, whether it's 1% or 50%, we have incomplete data sets, and we're creating entire economy destroying systems to deal with something we have no data on.
With incomplete data sets, not only that, but our solutions aren't guaranteed to be effective and could end up making things worse in some lights with incomplete data sets, because we're not approaching the problem with a full picture of the situation at hand. So maybe, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Josh, have you heard of the new? That's what
I tell the hippies.
They were talking about like 5 years ago with the mile tax.
Oh yeah, it's in testing. They have I don't know where it's at, but they're actually doing a survey sort of thing with it. Where they want to.
I think in Washington.
California's talking about it as well because they're trying to tax you by the mile.
Isn't that the mother load of bad ideas? I mean, what else can they do to us here? The business tax is fucking. It's uninhabitable. That's probably not even the right word. It's something. The living tax, the gas tax, the fucking product tax, the property tax. I mean, what else?
You're missing probably one of the biggest taxes. You're probably not even thinking of as a tax. No, the minimum wage tax is what I call it, because the higher your minimum wage, it's essentially a tax in the form of monetary inflation and economic strain.
But here's the best part about that.
From an economic standpoint, it's like a tax.
We're headed for Marxism.
That mile per gallon tax is great because in places like Washington, they're pitching it saying that they're going to get rid of the gas tax and have that instead because people are buying less fuel thanks to electric and hybrid vehicles. But you have to remember, this is California. We double down on stupid here. So not only will we keep the gas tax, we'll probably add the mile per gallon, the miles driven gas tax on top of it. Because remember, we don't tax gas because we need to fix roads or we'll be fixing roads. We tax gas because it's a sin and we don't want you to use it anymore. Again, we're talking religion, not science here. And so what will happen is we'll add that tax on top. That's like they just actually they kind of did this when they added in SB1. There's I think it's $100. It starts in 2020, but it's $100 per year tax on zero emission vehicles. So they've already started adding taxes on vehicles that don't use petroleum. And the best part about that is that those vehicles, as you mentioned earlier with like the lithium batteries out of Africa and everywhere else, is that the electric vehicles are worse for the environment by being created than just buying an old beater on Craigslist and driving that around for 5 years because it's already been created. You're not doing further ecological damage by building something new. And all you're doing is adding more gas, which has been fairly clean for the last 30 years.
Plus, the damage that's been done because of leaded petroleum is already done and can't really be undone. You can't.
I'm sorry, but I can't
fix that.
I can't ride a bike from Bakersfield to Orange County, and you could.
California
is spread out. Okay, We've got LA, we've got Orange County,
I mean,
we've got Bakersfield, and then like Sacramento and San Francisco and San Diego. I mean, all these places are pretty spread out. And if you want to go visit your family, because all my family's in Orange County. That's where I'm from. That's where I met Sean.
Oh, well, because of all the, especially the gas tax, next time I need to go visit my family in LA, I'm not going to be able to afford to drive down there. So I'm going to just take, the environmentally superior way of just paying for a plane ticket because it's cheaper.
Yeah, Travis.
I'll just pay for the so clean.
Why do you think the catalytic converter was created?
I'll just pay for the clean jumbo jet.
But anyways, I make trips down to Orange County almost weekly, and if they were to do that, it would prevent me from seeing my family and my friends that are down there. I really don't have my wife's family's out here, and I have like one or two friends, but all my peeps are down there in Orange County, and that would prevent me from seeing them.
Because no one likes you.
But they'll just come back to you with, but that's why they're building high-speed rail, and they'll subsidize it. Or maybe if you get a job with government, you can get one of those, those thousands of free trips that like the people on BART get up in San Francisco, where they're all getting, everyone who works for government or as a family member in government gets free rides on their transportation system.
Yeah,
I mean, for anyone listening,
$40 billion.
For anyone listening at home,
I'll be able to do that. Fucking great.
Who's interested in learning more about public transit, I would advise you to take a nice road trip to Tempe, Arizona, and go check out their light rail project. It's probably still in construction.
Since when? 1982?
It's what it felt like.
I would recommend anybody who's interested in public transportation to just remember that Amtrak literally has a captive audience, and they lose money on alcohol.
Whoa!
Like they literally, you can't just jump off the train and go to your local bar. If you want to drink something, you have to buy it on the train, and they lose money on food and alcohol. Like Amtrak can't make money to a captive audience on the goods that they sell. That's how poorly the government runs things, and this is who we want to entrust all of our transportation to.
That explains why I like Amtrak so much.
You're like,
riding on Amtrak, not from a business standpoint.
Yeah, let's entrust them with all of our infrastructure and all of our spending and all of that.
Yeah.
I might be taking them soon.
We see how well the United States Postal Service does on their budgeting.
Oh Jesus Christ! I've worked inside of the big hubs of the Postal Service, and I'm grateful for their service because it's mostly free. But talk about a group of employees that just could give less shits of what they're doing.
I'm curious about how this happened with
they couldn't care less about what they're doing and mostly just complaining about their job and wanting more to do less and stuff like that. But I mean, good people, they're decent people, but just like, and I would come in as the graveyard shift was leaving and they looked like straight up zombies. I mean, I would be coming in at.
Well, as a graveyard guy, I mean, we all do.
No, no.
I have a special hatred for the post office because they're incompetent in that they said that overnight delivery would never be a thing, and then FedEx did it, and they said same-day delivery would never be a thing, and then FedEx did it. And the only reason the post office exists in the way it does is because back in the 1800s, a guy named Lysander Spooner created his American Postal Service, and the government and Congress declared he showed how incompetent they were and made a very profitable business. So Congress dedicated every road in the United States to be a postal road, and nobody but the government could deliver mail to your mailbox at that point forward. They changed the law to stop competition and have never been competitive since then. When I worked for FedEx Kinko's, I worked for Kinko's, it was FedEx office at the time. They signed a deal with the post office for the tune at the time, it's higher now, but at the time it was $18 billion contract because all of those priority packages, all those flat rate packages are shipped on FedEx planes.
It's funny you and Sean both work for FedEx, but that's not how you met.
Yeah, it's different. I technically worked for Kinko's, but they were owned by FedEx. But yeah, $18 billion a year from the post office because FedEx has the largest air fleet in the world outside of the U.S. military.
Yeah, and that was the thing is that they came up. Hold on, they came up with the idea of shipping by plane, which had never been done before. And actually, the guy's name was I think FedEx that came up with it, and before you know it, it's the biggest thing since fucking ramen.
Yeah, it was Fred Smith who was the CEO, the founder of FedEx, and he put a paper together, and his professor said it couldn't be done, and he went out and did it anyways. And then everybody scoffed at him and said, "Yeah, overnight delivery could never happen. Same day delivery could never happen." And he did it, and he went and did it, and then UPS came around, started competing with that, and the post office. The only reason the post office can do any of that is because they use FedEx's system to do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and UPS too.
Yeah, just government incompetence.
Anyways.
Well, I think we should have you on for another episode sometime and do an episode on economics, competition in the marketplace, and
definitely
state-enforced monopoly, because that is
coming up in the lineup.
Passionate topic for me.
We've got
I'd actually love that.
For next week. So in closing, let's talk about what's coming up on Monday, which will be released probably Tuesday. We're going to have a couple Black Lives Matter supporters on, and a couple non-Black Lives Matter supporters on. It should get pretty interesting. Black Lives Matter versus and how they're compared to Nazis, I guess, or how Nazis are worse than Black Lives Matter. I don't know. It's gonna get ugly. And then in two weeks we have. I'm glad nobody brought this up because it's a really hot topic right now. Why Hillary lost the election and why Donald Trump won. We've been avoiding it since the election happened. We covered the whole entire thing, and now we're going to we've avoided it for a long enough period of time. Now we're going to dive right back into it and get into the meat and potatoes on how it all went down. We got a new guest for that one. It's going to be great.
And
it's going to be huge.
I just want to put emphasis on how lucky Travis is right now, because there were a few points during this actual broadcast where I was going to bring up exactly why Hillary lost.
Oh, no.
And exactly why Trump won. It was so hard fighting it, but I knew that I just didn't want to say the T word, so I was following my rule of not saying the T word unless it's the T word episode.
We kind of avoid it. But
unless it's a T word episode, I ain't using it.
In 2 weeks, we're going to have a T word episode. So stay tuned for that. And Josh, it was a blast having you on.
Thanks
everybody, go listen to the Hourly Struggle. Where can we find the Hourly Struggle at?
TheHourlyStruggle.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We're on all those channels. My host his name is iHeart Comics. That's Sean on Twitter.
EYE Heart Comics.
And I tweet periodically under Hourly Struggle as well. So
Hourly Struggle. Damn, I tagged you under the Hourly Struggle. Oh well,
it's all right.
But anyways,
are we going to find you on Minds.com as well?
On what?
Minds.com.
I am on
Minds.com. I'll send a link after the show.
Minds.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with this. So no, you will not find us there.
How about Steam It?
The short of it is.
Again, thanks for having me on.
Great, man. We'll hit you up somewhere down the line to have you back on. I don't want to steal you too much from Sean, but I think you're great. I think both of you are great. And you guys both have a great... I would encourage people to listen to your podcast more than I would encourage them to listen to mine, as far as what you're going to learn, especially people that live in California. But for some reason, we have people that listen from France, China, Germany, and Russia. I don't know why, but I appreciate the fuck out of you guys. And on that note, I think we will shut this one down. Everybody, if you're still here, go add us on Mercury's Podcast. Leave a rate and review. I always mean to do this in the beginning of the fucking podcast. Anyways, it's Mercury's.
Because at this point, nobody's listening.
Look for it. It's fucking somewhere. God damn it. All right. Take care.
Cheers.
You right.